Hello, hello. It's me. It's Brian. I'm back with another episode of Peak Human. Today I have Veronica Max, my friend and healthcare practitioner that I now use because I don't have any doctor. I didn't really ever have a doctor except for Dr. Gary, who I used to do the Sapien podcast with. But Veronica is amazing. She's here in Austin. She lives on a homestead ranch. She's growing her own food. They have their own school. She's living this lifestyle. You really want to catch this one. She really has it all figured out with the diet and lifestyle stuff. We talk about circadian rhythm and light and the importance of sun. Talk about schooling and homeschooling and healthcare and home birth and stress and emotion and food and animal-based diets and seasonal eating. All of my favorite things. Veronica's amazing. A little update about Food Lies. We're getting close. I just saw the premiere of a regenerative ag film called Common Ground last night. It was great. Ran into some people in the film world. Hopefully they'll help get Food Lies going. We're pitching around to the big distribution companies, Netflix, very soon. Finishing episode 1. Nose to tail, firing on all cylinders. That's where you can get your meat, your body care products. That's nosetotail.org. That's how this show is possible. Support our ranchers, support our good products. That's how you can support this podcast. Other than that, you can share with family and friends, give it a review on iTunes, and go back and listen to the old ones. So enjoy this one with Veronica Max. Hello, Veronica Max. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Brian?
I am great. I am great. We're here in Austin, yet we're on the air instead of in person.
Hey, the convenience of Zoom.
Yeah, why not? Actually, it's kind of is easier in a lot of ways, even to edit the video. So, everyone, this is Veronica. She's actually my health practitioner. You're a nurse practitioner. You are almost a doctor. I guess you can do a lot of things like a doctor can do, but
Don't tell that. Don't
you
say
don't
that to
have the
the
years of
Medical
missed training.
Association.
What's that?
Yeah, I don't have. I said don't tell that to the Texas Medical Association. No. Yeah. No. I'm a family nurse practitioner and founder of Ultra Personal Healthcare. And as you know, we provide concierge, holistic family practice care to children and adults in the Austin and Dripping Springs areas.
Well, it's great because you don't have all the years of indoctrination from medical school on how to do everything with pills and procedures.
That
So,
is true.
yeah, this is great. So I've had all kinds of doctors and scientists over the years on the show. Never someone quite like you that just, uses natural health modalities, food, diet, lifestyle, all kinds of different things to treat people instead of medication. So this is awesome.
And I live it and breathe it too. That's the other thing.
Yeah. And you're Tucker Max's wife.
That lesser known, that's the other half. Yes.
Well, I just let people know because he was my recent guest, and obviously that's going to come up. Both of you are awesome. You're near Austin, doing great things on a homestead ranch, doing your own thing, starting your own school. Let's start there, just with the high level stuff. Like, what are you guys doing out there?
Yeah, so we bought 50 acres in 2021. Somewhere in 2019, 2020, both of us were doing a lot of our own emotional work. And in getting in touch with ourselves, we realized that we can't be, in a concrete jungle and be healthy. We really need to be on land in nature to be healthy. And so in 2021, we bought 50 acres in Dripping Springs, which, as you know, is about 45 minutes outside of Austin. And now we have about 50 sheep, a couple cows, which we actually just sent them to the processor. We're going to move them out and move in more sheep. Um, Egg laying hens, meat birds. And so really we produce, I think we produce all of our own protein at this point. We also put in a garden recently, although in Texas that's a lot more work than the protein bit, so we don't have that dialed in yet fully. But good news for us is that we're primarily meat and fat eaters. Uh,
Yeah.
so we're doing that, and then in the February of 2022, we bought about 10 acres with another couple and started threw on 6 buildings on the property. The other couple was mostly responsible for that. So they have contacts with contractors and things. And then we started a school. It's a Waldorf inspired school based on the teachings of Rudolf Steiner. So if anybody's familiar with biodynamic farming, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Brian, then he was the kind of the founder of that. So about 90 kids, nursery through eighth grade, and so we're in our second year now. And so I've got four kids in total. One is at home, two are at that school, and then our oldest Bishop, we are homeschooling, and Tucker is actually spearheading that process. So
That's great. Yeah, you're living the lifestyle. And tell me, I know you're part of a Waldorf school before, but I think the story is during COVID, they started doing all the masks, and you're just like, nope.
yeah, yeah. So if you know anything about Waldorf, Waldorf is very much anti-technology, which I didn't really have much of a philosophy or dog in that fight when we first put our bishop in Austin Waldorf School. But then I later have come to understand and value, um, you know, or understand the value of limiting technology, especially with children. But that certainly didn't lend itself to remote schooling, especially remote kindergarten. Really doesn't make much sense at all. So when COVID happened, they went fully remote and were remote for almost a year. And so, with about 50 other families, we pulled our son and started another school. We weren't really instrumental in that; just kind of went along with the ride, and were there for a couple of years during COVID. I didn't feel comfortable masking my children. Being able to see mouse is very important for speech development. And a lot of other reasons. And so, our children basically had a normal schooling environment throughout COVID, which I'm very grateful for. And then, like I said, in 2022, we started this other campus. This just a few minutes down the road from our house, and it's been amazing. We've got a chef. You'd appreciate this. A chef that makes farm to table meals. I mean, my husband takes him deer that he shoots or sheep from our ranch, and that's served for lunch at school. Along with they've got a little biodynamic farm at the school where they grow vegetables that they eat.
Wow, that's awesome. So they're not eating goldfish every 2 hours with orange juice and low fat milk and
No,
granola
they're
bars.
eating honestly, they're eating better than myself, better than most, adults, who have access to really high quality food. No, they're super lucky. I mean, they have things like, venison chili and, wild boar, uh, I don't know, wild boar pasta, and,
Sausage or
and it's
something.
all
Yeah,
like gluten free or heritage grains. Aaron Goldstein, he's the chef, and he does a great job.
that's great. I think I talked to him separately actually with
I think you
like
might have.
note.
And we were kind of connected through him through the School of Lunch program. Which have you
Yeah,
heard of
yeah,
this?
yeah, School of
Yeah.
Lunch. Yeah, yeah.
So have you talked to the people?
Oh, yeah. I had no idea you were connected with him.
Yeah, so I'm not personally connected with them. The other family somehow got connected with them. And then that's how we ended up finding Aaron and getting this program established, which, to be totally transparent, I was not really a big proponent of when we were starting the school, because I told the other Tony, who's, was spearheading, I was like, this is too much. This is too much for a first year program. This adds a layer of complexity and cost. We shouldn't do this. And I was completely wrong about that. I'm happy to be wrong about that.
Well, that's great. Yeah, it matters most, right? Gonna cut in real quick to talk about nosetail.org. This is my company that supports local family ranches here in Texas. We also do beef tallow body care, skin food, soap, great stuff, great products that support regenerative agriculture, support good families doing good things, and it supports this show. I don't have to take outside sponsors. So check out nosetail.org, get your box of meat sent right to your door, get your body care products made from beef tallow, and back to the show. Nutrition matters a lot. I want to know, how are these kids? Are they like the standard ADHD, or are they
Well, no,
focused?
not at all. Because I mean, if you think about what is ADHD and what, there's a lot of things that are going on there, right? But one problem would be this just simply that the traditional schooling environment is not a healthy environment for, a good percentage of young children, especially boys, right? Who are active and they have a lot of energy. And so, Waldorf and Steiner really understood that. And so, most Waldorf schools, the kids are outside a good portion of the day. They start their day with movement. They have movement class. Um, my oldest is 9, Bishop's 9, and we really have just started teaching him how to read and write. It's not because he can't; it's because we didn't feel and really Steiner didn't feel that was developmentally appropriate to do that in, for say, kindergarten. So, like our children are they're making crochet needles and learning to crochet, learning to finger knit before they learn to write. They're telling oral stories and singing and doing this while doing different movements with their body to connect the different sides of the brain before they're learning to read. So it's just, I really appreciate that approach to schooling. And so, no, I think it's a healthier environment for children to learn and grow in.
Do you think the food is mattering too? Because I mean, I
Oh,
remember,
absolutely.
yeah, just you saw Pete Evans' film, The Magic Pill. They had this whole segment with this ADHD, the son of the parents ADHD, and he would only eat goldfish or something, and chicken nuggets, and they got him on a high fat, high meat, no processed food diet, and the ADHD went away.
hmm No, of course, like with most things, there's numerous contributing factors, but absolutely sugar, artificial ingredients, dyes. There's all kinds of junk as you know, in processed food that can contribute to that and cause a problem. And certainly, like I said, my kids are getting things that are high quality pastured meats, local, seasonal fruit and vegetables. There's nothing healthier than that. They're not getting sugar, they're not getting processed food. I mean, the sugar, the thing that has the most sugar at our house would be 90% dark chocolate.
Yeah.
And our kids consider that a snack. In fact, when we go to birthday parties, I've never restricted, when we're out. I've never been crazy about not allowing my kids to have things. They go to birthday parties and there's cupcakes or whatever there. You'll notice they don't eat all of it. They'll take a few bites and that's it, because I think it's just overwhelming to their palate.
That's great. Cool. So what about I guess moving to the healthcare side, what is your kind of main philosophy on health? I don't know if that's too broad a question, but there's a
No.
standard paradigm, but you're outside of that standard paradigm of health. So you don't accept insurance. It's like a direct to patient primary care.
Correct. So, I mean, our model, I don't accept insurance because, there's numerous reasons for that. I like to spend time with patients. I like to prevent disease rather than just treating disease once it's set in. That's simply not terribly interesting to me. Of course, I'm trained and I can do that, right? But I'd much rather keep people healthy. I'd much rather have a relationship with my patients. So, I think really, and insurance just doesn't, as you know, insurance doesn't reimburse for prevention.
Mhm.
Insurance does not reimburse for me spending time with patients. If you're taking insurance, it becomes a volume mill, and it's how many patients can you see per day, and so that drives a lot of the low quality that you see in healthcare, because providers simply, they can only have 5-10 minutes with a patient. You simply can't do a good job in that time period. And a lot of that's not the fault of the doctors and the nurse practitioners and PAs. But it's the system that they've opted to work in. And so when I first started my own business, I knew that I did not want to opt into that model, that model was flawed. And I wanted more freedom to practice in the way that I like to practice, which is, like I said, to develop a relationship with people, to work with them as a partner in their care, and to spend time with them and to prevent disease. And so that's why I've chosen throughout my career to opt out of the insurance model. So for my practice, it's a monthly membership fee. And really that incentivizes me to keep my patients healthy and out of my office, right?
Yeah. Well, that's called the sentence aligning.
Correct, which, as you know, is not the case with health insurance. you
Yeah.
know and so yeah, and then beyond that, I think another thing that really stands out about how I practice in our practice is that, I really believe in the sovereignty of the individual. And what I mean by that is I view it as my job to provide you with education on the risk and benefits of any, procedure or intervention or medication or supplement or lifestyle change that I recommend, and for you to decide what's best for you and your family, without shaming or fear mongering or judgment. And that covers everything, whether it's a vaccine or a drug or you name it. It's not my job to tell you what to do. So I see myself much more as a guide and an educator with my patients, and it's more of a partnership. It's not this paternalistic model where I view myself as the expert and I know better about you than you do about your own body. I mean, that's preposterous to me.
It's the best model. And yeah, I mean, we had our first appointment that lasted forever, it seems like. I'm like, how are we still doing this? This is amazing. This is the most time I've ever spent times 5 with a doctor or a, practitioner.
Yeah, and that's important, right? Because the most important thing really that I can do is get to know you and understand your history and, the environment that you live in. I mean, that's critical for me to be able to providing you with good guidance on, staying healthy.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I wanna dig into your kind of model of health. Like, what is your way of thinking about the body and keeping it healthy? And going back to the schooling during COVID, you kept kids in school around people not wearing masks. To me, that suggests that it's more of like a terrain versus germ. I've talked about this before in podcasts. It's a really interesting debate, germ versus terrain theory, and maybe it's somewhere in between. But that explain kind of that and how the terrain theory works and maybe what your ideas of that are.
Yeah. Well, as the germ theory obviously is that there are bacteria or other pathogens that if they, get on or in your body, they're going to cause disease, right? That's the germ
Mhm.
theory that's generally accepted that then we treat these things with antibiotics if we're talking about bacteria or, prevent these viruses with immunizations. Terrain theory takes into account um, the human body and the health of the organism, right? Because in theory, a healthy person who is well nourished, who's not malnourished, and despite the abundance of calories in our modern society, most people are malnourished when we're talking
Mhm.
about nutrients. So terrain theory takes that into account and proposes that a healthy, well nourished individual is going to have a healthy, well functioning immune system. And just because they come into contact with some virus or bacteria doesn't mean that that's going to make them ill, right? Because we have viruses, bacteria living on our skin at all times. That doesn't mean that we're going to be sick. It's when we get stressed, when we're not sleeping enough, that then our immune system is compromised, and that's when those bacteria have an opportunity to cause disease.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I've come to understand health. It seems to make so much sense to me. I haven't been sick in I don't know how long. I always lose count. 7, 8 years? I don't know. No,
Well,
I
you
just
just need to, you just need to have a couple kids, and then you will get sick. Because I
maybe.
thought I was like, oh, I have the best immune system. I don't ever get sick. I'm around sick people all the time. I'm caring for people with flu. I've never had flu. And then when you have children who are like kissing all over you and drinking after you're drinking your drinks, and then they go to daycare for the first time, I was sick
Oh,
for like 6 months straight with one thing after
alright.
another.
I have heard that actually, yeah. No, I know some healthy parents who definitely have told me that. But I mean, I've played with their kids. I was fine. No, no, I don't. I believe you. I believe you though. It's definitely a different thing when you're a parent, but
And
it's
then,
pretty amazing.
add sleep deprivation to the mix there, and then you've got a recipe for getting sick. And and I don't view that as a bad thing, though. We need to be exposed to these things. We need these illnesses to have a healthy immune system. I mean, the immune system's designed to fight, right? And so, there's a great book called Epidemic of Absence, Allergies and Autoimmune Disease, or Allergies and Autoimmunity. Have you read that?
No.
It's by Vasquez. I think he's just like an investigative journalist or something. But basically, it's this idea that, right, the immune system is built, it's designed to fight, and when you raise children in a sterile environment where everything's been lysoled, where you never let your kid eat food that's fallen on the floor, and then when you also eradicate these different, parasitic infections and things, that the immune system doesn't have the opportunity to fine tune itself with these low grade infections, and so then you get increased prevalence of autoimmune diseases and allergic diseases.
Makes sense to me. I refuse to use Purell. I never wash a cut. Maybe it's to the detriment of my health one day where I'm just going to get my arm cut off because I didn't wash a cut. But so far, so good.
I do, when you cut yourself, probably a good idea to wash with something, but, like, I'm constantly telling parents, like, because I see tons of kids, right, with eczema and things like that, and so you do not need to, clean your baby with soap. Let them, if you like to give them baths because it's fun for them, it's fun for you, fine, put them in bath water, but you don't need to, they're not dirty. If they're
Yeah.
visibly soiled, then fine. But yeah, we don't need a lot of that. And it actually does cause problems, in fact. And so that's a great example of this germ theory versus terrain theory, right? So, with my kids, there's lots of studies showing that children who have older siblings, children who grew up on farms around animals, even just having a dog in the home, they have lower incidences of autoimmune disease and allergic diseases, right?
Makes sense to me. Yeah. And what else? Because I don't. It's funny because I wash my hands less during COVID. I just was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to wash my hands less than before. So I want to have a good immune system, and I think challenging it is part of it. And going to the gym, it's like I don't wipe down the stuff before I use it. I see some sweaty guy. Well, I mean, now I have the Sapien Center. Well, there's still sweaty guys at the Sapien Center, and they're all over the equipment. Never once have I wiped it down. I want that. I want to challenge my immune system.
No, it's definitely, I mean, I think there's something to be said for that. Obviously, being in the medical field, having a medical practice, I definitely do wash my hands in between patients and sanitize surfaces. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. I'll tell you this story one more time. I probably told it on many podcasts already about my experience with the flu. Never got the flu unless it was during college, during exam week when I wasn't sleeping, stressed out, and I had the worst diet of my life. That's the only time I've ever had cavities in my whole life were those years of college. Never before, never after. And it's when I was eating microwave chips and cheese and cans of chili for meals. And so this all makes sense. But it's like, oh, was the flu bug only around during finals week? Those
It
random
popped up
three,
then. Yeah.
yeah, and especially at UCLA, we had this weird system where we had 3 finals per year. It was like a quarter system, and this. No, that's not how it works. It's because my immune system was at its absolute lowest during those times.
Yeah. And I mean, I see it, in the years following COVID, right? There's been unusual times, typically in the summertime, we wouldn't have a lot of, viral colds and things like that. But because of, isolation, I think we've just seen some weird patterns in the
Mhm.
years following. And I think it's, it hasn't quite gotten back to normal yet because we need to be around each other. We need for those pathogens to circulate to build immunity in the community.
Well, yeah, we're lowering our immune systems. No one's getting outside. They're not getting vitamin D.
It's huge.
Yeah, they're not getting exposure to other people. So then I get it. You can have this time of low immunity even in the summer that has never happened before because we haven't been locked down like that before.
Right.
So
Yeah.
talk about the sunlight thing. That's one pillar of health that I know you believe in.
Yeah,
and
no,
light in general, circadian,
that's
everything.
huge. And I think, I was joking the other day on another podcast that I pretty much design my life now to spend as much time as possible naked and barefoot outside. Now, I didn't understand a few years ago when I got that, I heard that voice from my intuition that said, "Hey, you cannot be separate from nature and be healthy." I didn't fully understand the why behind that at that moment in time, but over the past couple of years, I've really dove deep into quantum biology and circadian biology and really the sun and exposure, because we evolved outside in the elements under the sun, and sun exposure to the elements, is really important to a healthy body with normal levels of sex hormones and thyroid hormone. I mean, you just think about this, right? There's thousands of different processes that have to happen in the body over a 24-hour period. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So, how do you think the body knows to coordinate those processes? Because they have to be timed theoretically,
Well, the circadian rhythm is based on light. Yeah, I mean, know that all organisms can sense light, and they
right? So
have
we
some
have
sort of yeah.
exactly. So we sense light through both our eyes and our skin. So we have something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN, that's at the back of behind the retina, and that's basically like the body's master clock. And so we are able to perceive light, and by the different spectrum of light which differs by the time of day, our body is able to tell what time it is. So we do need lots of sunlight during the day. And then the flip side of that is that we also need complete darkness at night. And that's something that, with all of this technology, with light pollution, people aren't getting. And there's studies showing, if you just Google ALAN, or artificial light at night, and obesity or diabetes, there's tons of research showing that we actually will produce glucose and insulin by exposure to blue light. No food involved there. So you can become overweight and diabetic with artificial light alone. Like, that's mind blowing to me.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I believe it too. There's so much we were talking before we started recording, we are talking about how emotion and stress can cause that stuff too.
hmm Emotion, of course, if you're under emotional stress, if you have trauma that's not resolved, if you have emotions that you have not felt, that are just being stored in your body. There's a great book called "The Body Keeps the Score." If you haven't read it, have you read that?
I have it. It's actually sitting on my couch. I have too many books, but yes, I have it.
Put that one to the top, Brian.
Okay.
But that will drive up cortisol. That puts your nervous system in this chronic fight, flight, freeze, or fawn state, which we're not supposed to be in chronically, where you get elevated cortisol levels, and that causes a whole host of issues. We were talking about thyroid too. That's going to downregulate conversion of free T4 to free T3, which is your active thyroid hormone. So looking at the prevalence of hypothyroidism, I believe that right there is a very big cause, or one contributing factor.
Mhm. So
So
light. So yeah, go. So we didn't. I didn't want to move away from circadian rhythm. I kind of took us away
yeah,
a little bit.
yeah. So
And light.
light's super important. Getting enough light during the day. One thing that I practice in my household is that upon waking, before I turn on any overhead lights, because most lights these days are LEDs, so that's a large amount of blue light, without being balanced by the rest of the spectrum, which is very unnatural. The sun's a nice blend of all the colors of light. And so the first thing I do in the morning is I head outside, naked, bare eyes, no glasses, sunglasses, contacts, and I look east. Sometimes it's only 5 minutes that I'm able to do that. Sometimes I'm able to do that for 30 minutes. Now that the kids have started school, it's closer to five. And then, I just kind of, that's a moment of gratitude for the day as well. And I do that before I go inside where there are lights on in the kitchen, before I look at any screens. And that's really important because that signals to your body through that SCN that, hey, it's a new day. It's time to get things moving. It's time to start making those steroid sex hormones. So people with hormonal issues, fertility problems, low testosterone, PCOS, all of those things that are related to imbalances of sex hormones. This is something that is critical, that is often overlooked, and that is getting first light you should see in the day is natural sunlight. And then, I just make a practice of trying to get outside as much as possible during the day. Another time, we have UVA rise, which is when the sun's about 10 degrees above the horizon. That's a really important time. As you might know, midday sun is really important that's when UVB is available. That's, by that hitting your skin, you're going to make vitamin D. And then, sunrise is another good time when there's a lot of infrared red light available. And of course, there's been a lot of news about red light and infrared light recently and all of the health benefits of that. But the very best place you can get red light is not from a red light lamp, it's from going outside into the sun.
And sunset. You said sunrise, but also sunset.
Sunrise and sunset is where you're going to have the most red and infrared light available.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is something that I've started to do. Well, I do have a dog, so I do go out and walk first thing. But before I even do that, I started not looking at my phone. So you kind of didn't mention that part too. Is before it's so tempting to look at your phone in the morning, but now I go and get light on my face, even if it's just out the window before anything.
Well, even opening the window, because here's the thing that a lot of people aren't aware of, that even clear glass, so I've got a window right here, which actually I open it most of the time in my office. And that's because, right, light is both a particle and a wave. So if you just crack the window, you're getting that full spectrum of light in. But clear glass like that actually filters something like 40 to 60% of red light and pretty much all UV. So the only thing that's really getting through the window is blue light. Um, so important to crack. So, I mean, I look like a crazy person in the summertime when it's 105 degrees, but I actually do crack my windows. My kids complain, but I'm like, that because I'm letting the full spectrum of light in, and trying to benefit from that even when I'm on the move. So there's all kinds of little hacks like that because I've got 4 kids, I've got a business, I've got a very busy life, but you can still incorporate these principles, to try to offset some of the negative impact of our modern lifestyle.
Hmm. And then also, people don't really connect this, but go like light in the morning is so important for going to sleep and melatonin production.
That's right. So it's that red light around sunrise that actually is causes your the production of melatonin in your pineal gland. But what a lot of people don't understand too is that your mitochondria also make melatonin. And so again, this is why light is just so very important. And the other on the flip side of that, so when you're looking at your phone, so you mentioned looking at your phone first thing in the morning. Well, that's got a lot of blue light, which is naturally only available around midday, that level of blue light. So if you're looking at your phone first thing in the morning, you're sending a signal to your brain that, hey, it's midday, it's noon. But that's confusing, right? Because if your systems are functioning properly, your cortisol is elevated because it's first thing in the morning. That shouldn't be, so this creates a mismatch. It creates confusion or chaos in the body. And what is chaos in the body? That's inflammation. And as you know, and as I'm sure most of your listeners know, that pretty much all modern disease is disease of inflammation, right? And then the same thing. So that blue light, if you're looking at the same screen after dark, blue light suppresses melatonin, which is supposed to be peaking, in the evenings.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to be better about that at night. I have the blue blocking stuff on my computer and the phone goes down. So you
Mhm.
also use the glasses as well?
Yeah, so you can see I have these are blue light glasses that I've got on. So these are yellow lenses that I do during the day. So I don't know if you saw this. I think it was I don't know who did the study and who was talking about it recently, but basically I saw headlines that blue light blocking glasses don't work. Well, the study was looking at blue light blockers that have clear lenses. Like most prescription lens companies makes these days. Those don't work. For the day, I always wear a pair of yellow lenses when I'm on the computer and can't be outside. The other strategy I use is I try to, on days that I'm just doing calls and maybe I'm working from home, I try to go outside with my computer and just work from outside because that way I'm getting the full spectrum of light in my eyes, not just what's from the screen. But I do wear these when I'm inside, and then I use Iris software on my computer, which not only dims the light but also uh, eliminates flicker because that's something else that can be problematic. But there's also f.lux, which you might be familiar with.
Yeah.
And then at nighttime, if I need to be on my computer after night, which again, I'm just like everybody else. I've got 4 kids. That's often the times when I can get work done. Even though I don't like it, I am often on the computer after dark. So I have red or orange blue light blocking glasses that I wear after sunset.
Nice. Yeah, it's big. It's big. People overlook the light. It's kind of hard pill to swallow too because I'm such a food guy. It's just like, you know, I'm hesitant to get into the light stuff, but I'm
Why are you
realizing,
hesitant?
well, it just seems a little woo to me, but I know it's not. No, I get it. Like there's a lot of science. Like you just went over some of the science. It's very scientific, but it just seems a little out there to
But
you
doesn't it
know?
make sense? I mean, from the same token that you have kind of landed on an ancestral diet as being, kind of a healthy diet, from that same token, I mean, you visited the Hadza, right?
Mhm.
Are they not outside under the sunlight at
Well,
all
yeah.
times?
Yeah, no, I mean, they're doing it all. They have the best circadian rhythm in the game.
Well, that's right. Because didn't Jeff Leach? You know who I'm talking about? I think it's the American GI Project or the American Gut Project or
Uh,
something like that. You
something
familiar?
I kinda remember. Yeah, I don't yeah.
I think he's based here in Austin, if I'm not mistaken. But he did some study where he went to, I think it was the Hadza. I'm pretty certain it was, and he fed them crap. He fed them Fanta, gave them antibiotics, didn't alter the microbiome one bit. Now, isn't that interesting?
They dominated it.
So, and then the question is why? So, if it's not the food, then what is it? And they notice seasonal shifts in the microbiome. What's changing with the seasons, Brian?
The light. They're also really in contact with nature. I was with them, we were eating off the ground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, of course. What's better for your gut than, getting some dirt? That's why, I let my kids, my son he stopped doing it now because my oldest son, but he was going into the chicken coop barefoot, to get his eggs until he got stung by something. We're still not sure what it was,
Oh,
but yeah, being in the dirt and around animals and bacteria and all those things is great for you.
but the light no, yeah, they do have a strong immune system, strong gut, I guess. That's interesting that they can even conquer the processed
Fanta
foods, all that
and
stuff like that.
antibiotics, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the antibiotics is very surprising. The soda, stuff like that, I'm like, okay, yeah. For, in small doses, it's not like Fanta's gonna kill you. Apparently it didn't do anything to them. But
Didn't
the
shift.
antibiotic stuff is interesting.
It is. It's fascinating. So, obviously we need a lot more research on this. Although I don't know it's really in the interest of most of the people who are funding the research, right? Because who's going to make money off of sunlight?
No, no one. But okay, so what's next in your health paradigm?
Yeah, I mean, of course, healthy food. Which, what is a healthy diet? I think we're pretty much in alignment on that. If you look again to how we evolved, it's eating meat, fish, seasonal fruit, and vegetables. I do think that, and obviously high quality. Like I said, Tucker and I, one of our priorities was being able to produce our own meat. And I can tell you, having slaughtered, first off, it's a really intimate thing to, see how you're to raise animals and then also to end their lives, and to be involved with that. And it just adds a whole other kind of spiritual level to that. But I mean, the food tastes drastically different. So, like our sheep tastes so it doesn't taste. I've always liked lamb. Most lamb have, but it has a lamby flavor. Our sheep does not have a lamby flavor. It's even when we've slaughtered them at a little bit older age or intact, meaning not castrated. Our chicken, I can't eat pastured organic chicken from Whole Foods anymore. After having our own meat birds, like it's so clean tasting. Like the first time, I don't know, did Tucker tell you this story? The first time we had, in fact, it was from one of our friends, Jesse Elder, who we bought meat birds from him before we had our own. And Tucker brought one home, cooked it. He just roasted it with salt and pepper. And our children are not crazy eaters, but he couldn't even get it onto the plates. Like they just devoured it before he got it onto plates. It was so good.
Hmm.
So, where I was going with that is just local, high quality, pasture raised, meat, seafood and shellfish when available, because that's critical when you're talking about that light component. You need that DHA to really absorb and utilize the light from the sun. So that DHA is critical. And then also the seasonal and local veggies. Really important, and this gets into light as well, to not be eating, for instance, a banana that's grown in Brazil in Boston in the winter, because that would never grow in your local environment, and that creates confusion or mismatch, and your body can sense that, which is a
Yeah.
crazy idea.
No, I know. Seasonal eating to me before did seem like kooky. And then I realized like, oh no, it makes sense. It's for a reason. Your body has adapted to these seasons. And yeah, maybe it is that light and the circadian rhythm is why. And that it's if you're eating mangoes and pineapple and bananas in the middle of winter, it kind of is like, what's going on?
Right, your body would never you never would have had access to that prior to, planes, trains, and automobiles, right?
But well, here's the thing. But what if you had honey and stuff like that?
But that's locally available. If it's available in your environment, I presume, for the most part, right, as long as you're not eating something that, poisonous berries or something, that it's generally, um, you know, appropriate food. Um, I was going to say something else along those lines, and it just slipped my
Mm.
mind. But yeah, eating seasonally and locally, I really believe to be very, very important. Oh, and what I was going to say too, right? So that gets into this concept of, seasonal eating. During the summertime, a lot of the sunlight, because based on the sunlight, there's a lot of fruit and vegetables, that carbohydrate that's available. So eating more carb heavy in the summer and getting more, getting into ketosis, maybe fasting a bit more in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm all about that. Is not doing the same thing every day as well and not overdoing anything as well. So it's kind of all these things combined because that's never what we did throughout history. But
And
yeah, talk more about
nature's kind of taking care of that too for us, right? You don't even have to think about it. If you're following nature, you're going to be okay.
exactly. That's why there's no one size fits all solution. And it's just nature is always varied. But we don't do that. In modern society, nothing's varied. It's 24/7, 365, whatever you want on Uber Eats.
Yeah. No, and that gets into, when we were talking about fasting earlier, again, we evolved to have periods of scarcity. And to be able to run on these two different energy systems, glycolysis, or breaking down sugar for fuel, and ketosis, or breaking down fatty acids and making ketones for fuel. And most people are spending all of their time in glycolysis, and that creates a big problem.
Yeah. So before we started recording, we talked about that fasting, but it's a delicate subject because some people overdo it, or yeah, going low carb for too long. But yeah, I've been talking about this for years now of being mindful of that. but still, it's still good to do it sometimes, or to not just be standard American eating for 18 hours a day, all the waking hours, just eating, eating, eating. So, yeah, talk about that more.
Yeah. So, I mean, if first off, we talked about kind of nature and how we evolved, but then if you look at all the major religions, you look at Christianity, you look at Islam, they all incorporate fasting. And so it's almost like we've lost, there was some sort of wisdom there that was being imparted, and we've lost that. And that's because fasting, when you get into fasting and you get into deep levels of ketosis, that triggers autophagy, which, literally means self eating. So we have this I always tell patients, I believe that you are a self healing, entity, and we just need to be able to access that wisdom there. So autophagy is literally self-healing. Our cells have the ability to go in and clean themselves out, and if a cell is beyond repair, then we have another process called apoptosis, where we just destroy that cell and create new ones. And so fasting is one way that we can get into autophagy and apoptosis, and that's really important to prevent chronic disease, to prevent cancer. Right? That's fasting. I really do think can be. I really think it's part of one of those pillars. Again, just because we evolved, there were periods of scarcity where we were hunting, where we didn't have access to food, and so, like I said, our body is just built. We need some of those periods in our life to get access to the self healing capabilities, and whether that looks like you do that once a year, like you would in a religious setting, or whether it looks like you incorporate fasting maybe once or twice a week. On a weekly basis, some fasting is important. You're absolutely right. What I do see is that, because I'd say my patient population leans very health conscious. And a lot of my patients are entrepreneurs, and they're very high level go getters. And sometimes they take things to the extreme. And so I would say more often than not, I am counseling patients on, hey, literally before we got on the call today, I was talking to someone else who he was fasting so extremely. He would not eat Monday through Friday, and then he would eat whatever he wanted on Saturday and Sundays. And he did that for months. So,
Wow.
I mean, so you do that, and what you do is you drive your leptin, which leptin is this hormone that your fat cells make to communicate with your brain to manage energy in your body, to say, hey, I need you to eat more. We need more energy on board, or hey, you're full. You need to stop eating. We've got enough energy on board. And so what happens is that leptin, you fast too much, you push that low, that tells your thyroid, hey, we've got to be really efficient. We've got to conserve energy. So let's shut the thyroid down. Let's shut down sex hormones, because you definitely don't want to procreate in a period of scarcity. And so that creates all kinds of problems. But I would say that what we see mostly in the U.S. is the opposite of that. It's leptin that's too high, because we've just lost control of that signaling, because people are just eating, eating, eating all the time.
And eating the
So,
wrong things. And eating
yeah,
the wrong
that too.
things too.
That
Yeah.
too. But fasting, so getting back to fasting though, and then fasting is a stressor on the body. Some stress is good. Too much stress, especially in the context of you're not sleeping, you're working long hours, and all the you're inside all the time, so you're not getting access to your light, and that creates a stress in the body because your circadian signaling is off. Then that can cause serious problems, and that's too much stress. But a little bit of stress, a little bit of hormesis is necessary for health. So it's this Goldilocks thing. There's this kind of nice middle ground, that's a good place to be, but you go either into the extreme and you can run into problems.
Yeah. The Goldilocks zone is big in health. I've been talking about it too with sauna, cold plunge. What else? Going like super low carb keto for too long. There's so
Mhm.
many things that people take to the extreme. But if they do it appropriately, it's amazing. It's fantastic. Love sauna, love cold plunge. I do it
Yeah,
appropriately.
all of those things are great. Sauna, right? One of the reasons I think that's so effective and great for your health is because it makes your mitochondria more efficient at producing water, and that's one of the big roles of the mitochondria. It's not just to make energy or ATP, but it produces water, which is, we've got water. We learn, right, in early biology that, we're what, 70 something percent water, or 73% water or something like that.
Forget. Yeah.
But it's important that our body's hydrated. And part of that is we have to make our mitochondria need to be able to make water. And that already decreases with, our ability to do that decreases with age. But then you add these other things to the mix, EMFs, non-native EMFs, and lack of sunlight, and that can create, disease.
So sauna, cold plunge, fasting, stressors, too much. Oh, that's where it's going. Thyroid. So you mentioned thyroid.
Yeah.
So a lot of women I know around the world, even today, message on Instagram, Hashimoto's, thyroid
Mhm.
problems. What's going on there?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things involved. Let's maybe take it back. I would assume most of your listeners know what Hashimoto's is, but Hashimoto's is autoimmune hypothyroidism. So hypothyroidism is an underactive thyroid. As your labs will show an elevated TSH and a low free T4, free T3. Those are your active thyroid hormones. And so not all hypothyroidism is autoimmune, but that is the primary cause of hypothyroidism in America, I know. And, that primarily afflicts women. As to what's going on there, I think there's several things involved. One, sun exposure. You're gonna. It's like, really, sun again, but it's, sun it enters the eye, goes through the SCN, and what's back behind there? It's the hypothalamus is the next stop. And the hypothalamus makes TRH, or thyrotropin releasing hormone, which then tells your pituitary gland to make TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone, which then goes to the thyroid to say, make free T3 and free T4. And then free T4 has to be converted to free T3. And that is the end result of our thyroid hormone production. That's what controls the metabolism, gives you energy, etc. So there's a direct relationship with sunlight there. Beyond that, you talked about stress and you mentioned stress. Well, there's stress, and elevated cortisol levels lower that thyrotropin releasing hormone. It also lowers the conversion of T4 to T3. So those are two very, stress, lack of sun exposure. Then we talk about, toxins in the environment. So heavy metals, right? Heavy metals like to find a home in your thyroid gland. Fluoride, fluorides, causes problems there. And most water, of course, is fluoridated. And if you talk to, I remember, it wasn't too long ago, I took my kids to the dentist, and she's more of a mainstream dentist, but just fine, for cleanings, et cetera. I just tell her, hey, I don't want x-rays and I no fluoride, please. And, we started to have a conversation about fluoride, and then, it was clear that it wasn't going to be a productive conversation. And so, we just agreed to disagree on that topic. But yeah, fluoride is not good for your thyroid. And of course, we're inundated with all of these toxins and heavy metals in our environment. And so, those things cumulatively can cause issues. And then, as well, looking at autoimmune, especially autoimmune hypothyroidism, there's oftentimes something that's triggering the immune system. And traditionally, we've been looking at the gut and issues with the gut, leaky gut, being as kind of a center of autoimmunity. But again, I come back to sun, and we know that sun exposure is necessary to regulate the immune system. So I think there's a lot of things involved there, but the cool thing is there's a lot of things that you can do to kind of um, correct the hypothyroidism.
Before we get
Sometimes,
into
yeah.
before we get into how to correct it, we'll go more into leaky gut too, because I want to know more about food and even just dieting. A lot of dieting in general, whatever type of food it may be. Usually, people don't eat the right food in general, right? That they could be the leaky gut problems. Also, women are more pressured to diet. I don't know. All the women I know, they've been on diets their whole life.
Well, dieting, of course, but I tend to look at when we talk about leaky gut and food, gluten, we know is a common allergen. It causes inflammation, it's often very triggering. Pasteurized, low quality dairy, another common culprit. I often have patients come in and we see elevated thyroid antibodies, and just with the elimination of gluten and low quality, pasteurized dairy, we'll get their thyroid antibodies down significantly just with those two changes. Now, there are certainly patients that their immune system is being triggered by something else. So you could be sensitive to foods that are, considered healthy. Eggs, another common trigger. Nuts, a common trigger. I'm of the line of thought that if your gut is healthy, you should be able to tolerate, a wide range of plant foods. But what we see is if there's inflammation in the gut and the gut's leaky, then people tend to develop sensitivities to different types of food, and it can become a real problem. And then people, I've got some patients that are like, have come to me, Veronica, my food, what I can eat is so limited because I'm reacting to everything. And so, one of the things that we often look at then is that's where emotions come back in. Emotional stress and trauma, we know, causes inflammation and alters the microbiome in the gut. Which potentially makes it more susceptible to underlying, bacterial infections or yeast infections. And we look at that through a comprehensive stool study. We use doctor's data or GI map for that, but there are tools to investigate that. If you're dealing with symptoms like bloating and constipation or diarrhea or abdominal pain, those symptoms are not normal.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of triggering foods that are supposedly healthy, do you find people like say like I was doing the spinach shakes, the kale, spinach, almond milk, high oxalate, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it depends. I think that what I see is that if your gut is healthy, most people can tolerate those types of things. But, most of us have been exposed to antibiotics as children. We're exposed to all kinds of toxins in our environment. We're not getting enough light, which there's a lot of cool research on the microbiome, again, being modulated by light. Emotional stress. I mean, I just can't beat
Mm-hmm.
that one enough. That is so important. And I don't just mean job stress. I mean, hey, when I was a kid, there wasn't an adult around to help me feel my feelings until I shut them down and I suppressed them. Like my dad, you know, I love my dad, but my dad used to say, hey, stop crying. Crying's weakness. And so I just stuffed it. I stuffed my sadness. And with that, I stuffed all of my emotions. And you better believe that stayed with me. That did not go anywhere until I felt safe enough to feel those feelings.
Mm, that's a good one. Also, lack of seasonal eating too. It's like, yes, you should be able to handle spinach and kale, but if you did
Not
it
every day of the year.
every
Yes.
day of the year, not good.
No. Because it's normal for food to um, stimulate, to have an immune response to food. Some sort of immune response to food is normal, right? Because our immune system has to be on surveillance because we could potentially ingest. I've had food poisoning once in my life. It was miserable. Our immune system has to be on surveillance for, pathogens in the food that we eat. So it's normal to have an immune response, but what's not normal is to have this overactive immune response. And so theoretically, by exposing ourselves to that, we're not supposed to be eating, we would never in nature have access to spinach, you know, 365 days a year. Again, that goes back to seasonal eating, that those things are primarily available right during a certain time of year.
Yeah. And back to the dieting part, what I kind of meant was the constant like calorie restriction.
Yeah.
That could mess with your thyroid. If you could talk about
Oh,
that, because if you're going through like binging, purging, or just constant calorie restriction, stuff like that, like really damages your thyroid.
no, absolutely. Because what's happening, right? It's the same thing as fasting. If you're calorie restricting and you're stressing your body in other ways, I mean, calorie restriction is a stress. If you're then, because this is what I see a lot of 30 something women who are wanting to lose weight and maybe they have a little bit of an underactive thyroid. And then what do? They're restricting calories or fasting, doing CrossFit workouts every day of the week. And I love CrossFit, don't get me wrong, but they're overdoing it. They're overstressing themselves. They live in they have a high pressure job. They have emotional stress that they haven't dealt with. And all of that stress, absolutely. I mean, again, the thyroid's very sensitive to stress. The cortisol, I explained to you the mechanisms by the cortisol, lowers TRH, thyroid releasing hormone. It lowers conversion of T4 to T3, and so that affects your thyroid function. So they get in this vicious cycle in which they're trying to lose the weight, but they're actually making the situation worse. And they get in the situation where their leptin's low then too, and that's really hard to fix.
It is. And I know it's a whole host of things and you need to dial in your whole lifestyle too. But with the diet, I hate the calorie restriction part because you don't want to be calorie restricted. You want to be have an abundance of good foods. If you're eating the right calories, then you can theoretically lose weight naturally without trying because you're
Right,
not
well,
in a
yeah,
yeah.
because what's your body doing if you're restricting foods? You're sending your body the signal that there is scarcity. So your body wants you to survive. So what's it going to do? It's going to start to conserve energy. It's going to lower your metabolic rate and make it more difficult for you to lose weight, which is counterintuitive for people.
I know it's so important though. It's because there's all the calorie bros out there that just say calories in, calories out, doesn't matter. I'm like, no, you want nutrients. You said in the beginning, we're overfed and undernourished. We don't have a calorie problem. We have a nutrient problem. So it's like
Yes.
people. So I don't know. I don't like speaking for women or just talking about this stuff that much. But you tell me. It seems like they're afraid to eat red meat. They're afraid to eat fat. They're afraid to eat these healthy foods.
Yes. Yeah, and it's true. I mean, because what do most doctors tell you? What's in the mainstream news? Oh, well, I mean, it used to be meat will make you fat will make you fat. Now it's, oh, meat causes cancer. And it's like, okay, well, let's look at the type of meat that they looked at in these studies, right? But and I am no exception to that. I remember in college I had a couple months stint of I read the China study, and then I was like went vegetarian for 2 months. I was like, oh man, I felt like crap. Um, but and then I just found my way through CrossFit and other things to a more paleo diet, and then experimenting with ketosis and other things. I feel best right with meat, fish, seasonal fruit and vegetables in limited quantities. But no, meat and fat's not going to make you fat. It's extraordinarily nutrient dense, especially if you're eating high quality animals.
Yeah.
But
And
that last
eggs. Yeah.
last part's really important. Just like take dairy, for instance, right? You guys sell raw dairy
Yeah.
at Sapien Center.
Well, it's a pickup point officially.
Pickup point. Okay, sorry. You cannot legally. I don't want to get you in hot water, Brian. It's
Yeah.
you're yeah. Whatever the
It is. Well, no, it is a pickup point. We have a ranch we work with, and it's a pickup point.
correct,
So
right.
totally
Same
legal. Yeah.
thing. So we pick up raw milk from Cherry Mountain Dairy, which is amazing. They're out in Fredericksburg. They do a drop in Dripping Springs. which we compared it to the to your milk the other day,
Mm.
and I think Cherry Mountain came out on top.
With more fat or more, or do you
It's
just like it
richer,
better?
yeah, it's richer.
Oh, wow, because we thought we had the most fat in the game. If you let it settle, you can
Yeah.
see how much of it's fat in the gallon.
I think you need to check out Cherry Mountain,
Ooh,
and the other
wow.
thing that I like about them is it comes in a glass bottle, but, back to what we were talking about,
Mhm,
pasteurized dairy is a whole different beast than
mhm.
raw dairy from healthy cows, not pumped full of all kinds of hormones and antibiotics and crap, and, that is raw, so it has all the enzymes in there that help you digest it.
Yeah, so to put a button on this, women or anyone who wants to lose weight does not need to be afraid of calories. They need to be cognizant of nutrients, and they need
Mhm.
to be afraid of empty calories and trash calories and processed calories and oil and, processed grains and
Absolutely.
whatever.
And, it's because there's a degree, right? Another patient I was talking to today, he accidentally, he's lost 60 pounds in the past year working with me. And he had a little blip and we couldn't figure out what was going on. Well, he was going and getting a latte from Starbucks, and his latte turned into a breve latte, turned into a heavy cream latte. And he didn't realize that he was getting like eating 4,000 calories a day, right? So he had stalled his weight loss with
Mhm.
that. So there is a
Oh, I
point where
no,
it
I
comes in.
for
Yeah,
sure believe in that too. I've been talking to Dr. Ted Naiman about this for years and years, and he always made fun of the butter chuggers. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna put butter in my coffee and lose weight. It's like, no. I mean, it can help you start your weight loss journey and get you to do fasting.
right,
But you cannot just. But again, I don't want to call it an empty calorie, but you don't need that many energy calories from fat. You
right.
need nutrients and protein more. Yeah.
Totally on the same page there.
Okay. Uh, cool. So we got the nutrition stuff, light, circadian rhythm. What else? What else is left? We talk about motion stuff. What is
Of
left in
course,
the bucket?
yeah, I mean, movement is important, right? Although I don't have that as high up on the scale as maybe Peter Attia does. He's all about his exercise, but and I say that having been a Division I athlete. I played college basketball, and then I competed in CrossFit. So I
Mhm.
have an athletic background. I love athletics. I love exercise. I love movement. But I know that if you do that, if you focus on that and you don't get food right and you don't get light right, you're not going to meet your goals.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit further down on the list for me, but it is very important. So when I'm working with someone to lose weight or, I'm just telling them, find some sort of move, get outside, go for a walk. You can knock the sun exposure out with that. Do something you enjoy. And that also just being outside nature, it lowers your stress levels. It's just naturally calming.
I'm right there with you. Yeah, I played sports my whole life. Think it's amazing, but that's not where I go to help people to lose weight.
Mm-mm.
And yeah, I'm like, yeah, I take walks. I lift 25 minutes twice a week. It's less than an hour a week. Well, and I
Mhm.
play beach volleyball, but
Yeah.
it's not. Yeah, it's not like, oh man, it's the opposite of what they say. It's just like you got to get on the treadmill 45 minutes a day. You got to. I'm like, no,
No,
that's
and I
terrible.
do not again, personally, I hate that. You will never find me on a treadmill. I'd rather lift something heavy and then go sprint, than to go run 3 to 5 miles. I mean, that just sounds miserable to me. But I think that comes back to too, people are often running like people that are like chronic, what I call chronic cardio, they're
Mhm.
running away from their feelings with that.
Mm, that's a good one. So yeah, some people say it relieves stress. Maybe it does, but maybe there's some deep stress that you need to deal with
Yeah,
otherwise.
that's possible.
All right. So okay, so I think we hit most of the big health things. Oh, sleep, right? That's always one.
Of course, yeah. But that again, for me, that kind of gets bundled in with light because light hygiene is so important to good sleep, as we discussed. Getting that morning light so that you make sure that you're making your own melatonin and avoiding screens and artificial lights, which includes overhead lights, which are mostly LEDs these days, because that blue light hits receptors in your back of your retina, and that suppresses melatonin.
Mm.
So because I one of the things, I see all these people, and I've had to get Tucker like stop taking melatonin, because I can forward you the study. I just came across a study a month or two ago, but that melatonin actually destroys your retina.
Mm.
Supplemental melatonin.
Really?
Yeah. So not a good idea. Especially
Yeah.
I'm a real pet peeve. I hate it when I see people giving that to kids.
Yeah, no, I'm over it. I used to do it because it's like, oh, it's all natural and it's non-habit forming and all this stuff. And then I did find ways where I don't need it, where it's like, okay, if I don't have stress, if I'm not looking at the computer until 11 p.m. and I'm doing my morning light, don't need it at all.
Yeah, I've
So,
noticed personally, I haven't had a sleep problem, but I sleep so much better since I started, doing going outside for 5 minutes immediately upon waking, doing all the light hygiene stuff that we've discussed. I sleep much more deeply. And
yeah.
then it's finding things. So something I see frequently with a lot of people is people that are mouth breathers. You can see I have a pretty narrow nose, and so if there's any allergens in the air and my turbinates get a little bit enlarged or congested, I can't breathe through my nose. So mouth breathing is horrible for your sleep. I mean, it's horrible
Mhm.
for all kinds of things. I'm sure you've had somebody on to talk about that, but just something as simple as, putting on a breathe right nasal strip, it
Mhm.
looks real sexy to go to
Mhm.
sleep with, but makes a huge difference in quality of sleep.
Oh, I'm all about those. Yeah, yeah. It's
So people
big.
who are overweight, addressing sleep apnea, addressing these airway issues, and it doesn't just mean a CPAP machine. There's airway dentists these days. There's myofunctional therapy. These are exercises that can be done in the mouth. There's all kinds of interesting, what we call allied health professionals or other people in the healthcare community that are, have different options beyond just putting you on a CPAP.
Yeah. Well, I have a palate expander that I'm doing now because I had so many teeth extracted. I was just a product of all of the stupid health advice back in the day. All the standard American diet, food pyramid, get all your teeth extracted, like all this stuff. So, trying to widen my airways and my mouth.
And
And
you're seeing a doctor somewhere in out of state for that,
in
right?
LA, yeah, I'm trying to remember the
Because
name. Go back.
there aren't many doctors around that do it.
I know. I want to give him a shout out though. It's oh man, Doctor. Yeah, I had him on my podcast. I want to give him a shout out because yeah, I see him remotely, so I have to
Okay.
go to LA once in a while. But he's the man, and
I
I'll
know
stick it
that's
in the show notes.
Yeah, please do, because I know it's, the best time. I just want to mention this, the best time, because what did he say the success rate is? Because I know, obviously once you're an adult, your bones have pretty much formed. So it's best if for anyone who's watching who has children, to get your kid in and get them seen before they're, I think it's under 13 years of age, that, the success rate for these palate expanders are really high. But after that period of time, the success rate's pretty low.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's Doctor Gorman, Martin Gorman, and
Okay,
I
great.
think it's yeah, it's better late than never for sure.
Sure.
It's better than not doing it. Uh, Okay, and then, the last thing with the sleep is I just like to tell people to emphasize it. Some people, they're still in that mindset of, "I only need 5 hours of sleep," and it's just not true. I read the book, Why We Sleep, Matthew Walker, and it's just like, there's only a small, small percentage of people that genetically can get away with that. Everyone else just thinks they're getting away with it.
Right.
Yeah, so get your sleep. Okay, so now a few more things. I have some topics like women and children. I've had a run of men on the show. I actually am 50-50, male, female for my podcast guests. I have tons of women on, but it's been a while. So let's do some more female topics. And did we finish thyroid? You were kind of talking about how to reverse the
Yeah, so
thyroid
I
problem.
mean, things that you can do. So, I mean, one of the things that we start with, and obviously in my clinic, we do prescribe thyroid medication, because sometimes that's needed to get people feeling, if their thyroid levels are super low, and, we need to get them feeling better faster. But we also will focus on these kind of foundational things. So, like I mentioned, sunlight, getting control of stress levels, talking about emotion. So, it's no coincidence that the thyroid is in the throat, right? And so often there's some sort of blockage mentioned the throat chakra or difficulty in speaking your truth. So, and that often will manifest in a thyroid issue. So, again, it's always looking at. Of course, I'm not a psychotherapist. I don't, I'm not the one to treat that, but I have lots of relationships, and that's usually part of the treatment plan. Craniosacral therapy is great for that too. But getting your good sunlight, good light environment, controlling your stress levels, maybe even doing some sort of like halogen flush. So isotonic salt water in the morning, immediately upon waking, like once a month or something to help flush the fluoride um, out of the thyroid. That can be helpful. And then back to the basics that we've been talking about, making sure that you're not overdoing it with fasting or caloric restriction or working out. Again, those are all stressors to the body. And I've already told you how that directly suppresses thyroid, TRH, and conversion of T4 to T3.
Yeah. Eat the right foods, not less foods. Uh, okay. So then,
Oh, and then also, sorry, seafood, shellfish,
yeah,
those are great sources of selenium, zinc, B vitamins, all very important for
iodine,
thyroid.
iodine too.
Iodine, yes. How could I, for thyroid hormone health? And
I,
iodine's something else too. You got to be careful, and there's a lot of different viewpoints on this. I have seen iodine cause issues in patients that have autoimmune or Hashimoto's so autoimmune
mm,
hypothyroidism. But some people do have success supplementing with iodine as well. But I tend to be kind of wary about that
mm,
with my folks that have autoimmune hypothyroidism.
mm. Thoughtfully. Okay. Another ones were childbirth, home birth, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I think as I've mentioned to you before, I have 4 children. I had all of my babies at home with a midwife. Her name's Monica Stone here in Austin. Highly recommend her. Um, June Lampier actually delivered my third baby because Monica was out of town, and
Mm,
June was great too. She's in the Blanco in the Hill Country. But really, in Austin, we have so much access to tons of great midwives, especially now. Less so 10 years ago when I had my first baby. But I tell patients there's no right or wrong, place to have your baby. It's what's best for you. What's most important for me is that women know the options that they have. And growing up, I didn't even know that home birth was an option. I was a C-section baby. My mom was an OR nurse. She was super happy with having me as a C-section. But I knew when I was ready to have my babies, it was really important for me. I knew the importance of the microbiome, and it was really important for me to have a vaginal birth. And I knew that my chances of having a successful vaginal birth were better at home than in a hospital. Because in a hospital, if I've worked in a hospital, I mean, beyond the fact that, all the different infections that are running around, the medical errors that happen, just the fact that it's a cold, sterile environment and not some place I'd feel super comfortable, especially in a vulnerable point where I'm trying to bring a baby into the world. Um, that wasn't the right place for me, but kind of lost my train of thought there. But
oh,
yeah,
just the environment. Yeah, the environment at
Envi
home is much better.
environments, yeah, the environment at home is just what I was saying was, because they gotta turn over rooms in the hospital, so
Oh
they don't
yeah.
have time. If you're a first-time mom and you need to labor for 24 hours, they ain't got time for that. So then they start interventions like Pitocin, and the next thing you know, you're having really strong contractions. They're really painful. The baby's in distress, and now, that's just an intervention cascade. It just snowballs from there. So that's why I chose to have a home birth. Of course, birthing center is an option. A hospital birth with a midwife is an option. I really love the midwifery model of care. And I mean the true midwifery model of care, not the medicalized midwifery model of care. I feel like
Hmm.
many providers, midwives some of them have been kind of co-opted by the more traditional medical approach. But the true midwifery model of care, which views you, as a woman, as having all the knowledge you need within you to have this baby. And it's just about getting out of the way.
Mm. Well, you're looking at a guy that took the history of midwifery at UCLA. For some reason, that was a
You
class I
did?
took as an
No way.
engineer. I know all I don't remember it, but I took a whole class. It had a long title about the history of midwifery.
Really? That's, I mean, to me, that's fascinating that that class existed and available was available to you, and also that you took it.
You know, I was trying to broaden my engineering classes, and I went as far as I could away.
Well, that's quite well-rounded of you.
Yeah. So, oh, then also people have questions about the shot schedules, we'll call
Yeah,
them, right? There's a
shot.
lot of people these days that are woken up to different immunizations that they may not want.
Right. And this is a difficult one. Clearly, I think over the last couple of years, that's opened a lot of people's eyes, right? Just watching the approval process for these different shots that
Mhm.
got added to the immunization schedule recently. But I always tell parents, I mean, first off, it's important to educate yourself. It's also really important to listen to your intuition. So, you know, I don't even know now how many. Do you know how many shots are on the schedule these days?
I don't remember. It's like 5 times it was before, though, something like that.
Right. So, I mean, it's just, and the incentives, right? Because of immunity, these pharmaceutical companies, right? The incentives are such that um, create a shot. They can put it on the immunization schedule, and they're not liable if it's not safe, right? So
Mhm.
the incentives are definitely not in line for safety, and I think that's really important for people to know. I also think it's important to know that the immunization schedule, like, it's not designed for safety either. It's designed for convenience. Giving a lot of shots at one point in time is by far not the safest thing to do with a child, but it's the most expedient and convenient thing to do. So I think it's important for parents to understand that. I think it's important for them to do their own research. And I think it's important for them to listen to their intuition.
Mm.
Even if you don't understand or have a rationale for why you're feeling one way or the other, it's important to follow that and to honor that, because there is intelligence with your intuition, even if you can't intellectualize it.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of new research or new people that are looking into this that are medical professionals. I've met them around town that are kind of going against the narratives, and they have some really good information on their side. So,
Well, I mean, it's clear, like, clearly, right? So we put adjuvants as an example. We put adjuvants in shots um, to elicit immune response. But these adjuvants are often toxins, right? So, I think RFK Jr. did a podcast not too long ago with Rogan, right? Did you hear
mhm.
that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, and I've had patients bring that to me, but that's a very, there was a lot of great information on that podcast. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of evidence out there that that these things are not just all benefit and no risk, which is what we've been told and what medical professionals like myself have espoused. I haven't, I can't say I'm going to include my camp self in the camp, just like antibiotics, right? Antibiotics off clearly are not risk free. Fact, shots are not risk free, um, and it's important that people understand that and evaluate that themselves, and that they find themselves a provider who's willing to have a conversation about it. Because to me, it's a really big red flag if your healthcare provider is not willing to have a conversation, a non-judgmental, non-shaming, non-fear-mongering, educated conversation about the topic.
Good point. Yeah, that's kind of back to your original philosophy of like giving people the options and the information and have them make their own decisions.
Right. It doesn't matter what I do for myself or for my children. What matters is that you have the information that you need, and that you then can go and make the best decision for yourself and your family, because you've got different risk calculus than I do. You've got a different health history than I do, etc.
I like it. Awesome. So, how do people find you?
Our website is ultrapersonal.healthcare. And so there's information about me, about the practice on there. And then, of course, we're on Instagram and Facebook, although I can't say I'm super active on social. Spending most of my time with my kids or with my patients or my husband or, like I said, outside in the sun.
I love it. All right. Well, you're kind of our official practitioner now at the Sapien Center. So, that's amazing.
Mhm.
It's been good hanging out with you lately, and I'll see you soon.
All right, Brian, you have a good day. It's been great
See ya.
talking to you guys. Bye.